Hi everyone. Today we'll be having a brief chat on the important topic of cybersecurity with Michael Joseph. Michael Joseph is the Director of Austbrokers Cyber Pro, a specialist cyber insurance brokerage focusing solely on working with clients and other insurance brokers around managing cyber risk. Michael has extensive experience working closely with a range of organisations from small enterprises to large private and ASX-listed organisations by creating bespoke cyber insurance solutions. Michael is well versed in managing cyber incidents with key stakeholders, including forensic IT specialists, ensuring organisations are assisted in their time of need and that their cyber insurance program is proactive and clear in its response. So we'll kick off this morning, Michael, and there have been some very high-profile cyber incidents recently. Optus, Medibank, Woolworths, but to name a few. These are the big ones, but what other trends are you seeing?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks for having me today. Look, we've seen a lot of ransomware, as you'd be aware. The trends over the last 12 to 24 months haven't changed all that much, but what we're seeing now is more and more businesses being impacted by this sort of stuff. So obviously the ransomware piece is still quite significant. One thing that's probably changed in that area over the last sort of 12 to 24 months is to do with the fact that ransomware is now seeing the data being encrypted, and also the fact that data is being held and publicised in the threat to basically pay those ransoms. So that's a little bit of a change from the threat actors. Business email compromises are still significant, and they probably don't get enough attention. And this is obviously email compromises where funds are misdirected, and that tends to be a real issue for people that are managing funds like real estate agents, lawyers, and conveyancers.
Okay, yeah. So what are the main issues you see for? I mean, you just mentioned conveyancers and large dollar transactions, but any other issues for conveyancers that you see?
Yeah, look, I mean, the main issue that we're seeing in that industry and has been for quite some time are the misdirection of funds. I think threat actors are quite aware that through that process of transacting property, conveyancers play a pivotal role in that, and obviously they're dealing with funds. So we're seeing that. Obviously, we're also seeing a little bit of stuff going on with supply chain as well. So we're seeing IT service providers and IT vendors being hit by sort of cyber breaches, which are then going on to essentially affect third parties, and that can cause some problems, obviously, because it's important that third parties essentially understand the risk there and understand that they need to take steps if that occurs to sort of talk to and inform their clients.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting angle, actually. I know there's a recent incident with Harcourt's real estate firm in Victoria where I think it was their tenant software was compromised, and I suppose that demonstrates the implications for practice management software providers. What does that mean practically for conveyancers? Are they, if their software gets breached, what do they need to do?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing is to be aware of the sorts of data that you are holding, and understand that and understand where that data is being shared and who it's being shared with. Obviously, a lot of these software providers, have some pretty, strong terms and conditions around that in their favour. So sometimes it is quite difficult to push back on that. But it's about sort of being aware about the sort of data that you are holding for your clients, and understanding that if you are required under the Privacy Act, if you're collecting that data from your clients and passing it on to third-party providers, if those third-party providers have a breach, you do have a responsibility to be talking to your clients and notifying your clients of that incident if it meets the thresholds of an eligible data breach under the Privacy Act. So they're the sorts of things that conveyancers really need to be worried about and be looking at, and having conversations with some of those suppliers from time to time about their own data practices and how they're controlling and securing the data that you're sharing with them.
Yeah. I suppose one of the things that is probably going to bring some focus on regulators is these breaches, and when we talk about mandatory notification, you mentioned some of the qualifying factors around that. I understand one of them is revenue or turnover of 3 million a year. I believe that there probably would be some moves to reduce that. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, look, what we've probably seen from Medibank and Optus is we've seen the government act quite swiftly on bringing in reform around the Privacy Act. The previous government had that in the pipeline, but I think the current government has really pushed that quite quickly. We've recently seen a bill sort of being passed and gone through Parliament to make some changes to the Privacy Act. My thoughts are that $3 million will likely be scrapped in the future because there has been talk that is a little bit of an issue, and it's leading to a lot of under or no reporting, particularly given small businesses are the heart of the Australian economy. Other things that we're seeing in that space is we're going to see a very large increase in fines and penalties. At the moment, the privacy regime around fines and penalties is just not adequate and acceptable for the community. The fines and penalties are just far too low. So we're going to go to more, GDPR, General Data Protection regime that they have in Europe, where fines and penalties will be sort of, in line with turnover of businesses. The other interesting thing that we're going to see is we're going to see a bit of a change in terms of understanding whether the organisation has had an eligible data breach. Right now, there's no requirement to report to the OAIC unless it's confirmed that there is an eligible data breach or suspected that there's an eligible data breach. So what we're going to see, I think, moving forward, the Privacy Commissioner is going to be more active in that, and they're going to be investigating that sort of from day one where there's an issue, rather than sitting back and waiting for those notifications. So there's no doubt that could have an increase around cost, increase in information sharing, and document production, and the OAIC I think is going to be much more forceful, with organisations to make sure that they're maintaining their systems and also reporting these breaches in a timely manner.
Yeah. Okay, Michael. To wrap up this morning, you deal closely with Flight & Co. Provide a cyber triage service to AIC New South Wales business members. Can you briefly talk us through the benefits of that service and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the service, obviously, there's a 2-hour free call for any of the AIC members on an individual basis per annum. That call is there to sort of work through and sort of provide some general advice around sort of containing an incident, restoring, talking about how systems can potentially be restored, investigating the breach, assisting with, the recovery of funds. So that's a useful service for all the members. What it'll also do, if those members do have a cyber insurance policy, the team at Clyde & Co and the incident response manager will assist them in notifying their broker and also the insurer. And obviously then the insurer will get involved and start talking to the client, to the AIC member, about potentially what to do next, and the sorts of costs associated with that. And many of those costs will obviously be covered under the insurance policy. Okay. And we've actually had a couple of reports through Clyde & Co for these. So what we're planning on doing down the track, we'll be releasing some little case studies, both in written and I'll get the Clyde & Co partner to come on a similar call to this, to just go through to where we're seeing some of these threats to our members. So I think that sort of covers what we wanted to talk about today, Michael. Thank you very much for your time again from our members, and have a good afternoon. No problem. Thanks so much, Chris. Much appreciated, and I hope everyone has a good Christmas and New Year.
Thanks very much. Okay, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.